Recently, I've wanted to get back into writing. I'm admittedly out of practice for multiple different reasons, but I knew that I needed to get a good idea what good writing is again. But I also needed a good idea of what bad writing is. Booktok is notorious for making books that are fucking awful seem appealing. It's not a new take to say that people on TikTok don't have taste, but people on TikTok don't have taste. So with that being said, I decided to read a Booktok book that people that are not 14 years old have read and have said, hey, this actually isn't as good as you think it is, because I needed to get a good idea of what bad writing is when it's published. I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Usually when I do book videos, I annotate the book as I go forward, whether that be through my notes app or physical sticky note annotations. And admittedly, I don't do book reviews often on this channel. The problem is with this book is I feel like it's dealing with a subject matter that is very, very sensitive, and I cannot do that in its entirety at the very least. So I have to tread a field full of glass, trying to insert as much nuance and care into my words as possible. Basically, only for part of this video can I really do that lol, this is Wattpad cringe, because it is, but that's not the point. Anyways, before we continue, I've already mentioned there's some sensitive subjects, but I'm going to verbally trigger warning this one. It's going to talk about abuse. I'm going to mention probably in detail the abuse cycle and the, how abusers show themselves to the public. And if that is something that may trigger you, please take care of yourself and do not watch the video. Getting that out of the way, let's start with the non-abuse related cringe. So I am going to start this video with the annotations and basically explain to you all of the shit in this book that makes it lol Wattpad cringe. I feel like I should do a general overview of what this book is about real quick. Basically, we've got our main character, Lily, whose father recently died. He was abusive to her. And also, spoiler warning, I guess. You're gonna get spoiled. I'm not going to avoid spoilers. Not that I'd want you to read this book anyways, but that's besides the point. Her father dies, and then within the first few pages, she meets the main love interest, Ryle. Yes, Ryle, but we'll get to that in a second. Basically, it's a story about the abuse cycle is what Colleen Hoover was trying to go with here. And she did not do a good job. So with that general overview, let's get into the young adult novel cringe, Wattpad bullshit that I encountered when reading this book. First and foremost, the main character's name, the first love interest's name, and the second love interest's name are just a quintessential young adult novel Wattpad cringe nonsense. Her name is Lily Bloom, and she wants to open a flower shop. I'm in pain. And then her love interest's name is Ryle. R-Y-L-E. Why? Ryle Kincaid. Are you fucking with me right now? Come on, man. Why name your main love interest Ryle when you could have just named him Kyle or Riley? Like, what is the fucking point? And then, to make it worse, the second love interest's name is Atlas. Here's the thing, right? Having a unique name is not a bad thing, necessarily. It's when you try to give all three of your main characters, unique names when they are all, in fact, white people. You're doing too much. 1 point for Wattpad, 0 points for Colleen Hoover. The first third of the book especially felt like a One Direction fan fiction on Wattpad from 2012. It was a struggle for me to get through the first third of this book for that reason. Colleen Hoover, Wattpad sin number 2, the main love interest is an attractive neurosurgeon that Lily just so happens upon on the roof while she's contemplating. Give me a fucking break. Colleen Hoover's Wattpad sin number 3, there's basically no chemistry between Ryle and Lily, just on a romance point, I suppose. We'll get to the abuse stuff later, where I'm going to be more careful and nuanced about it. But on a non-abuse level, there is no chemistry between Ryle and Lily, and they meet within the first 5 pages. And within those first 5 pages, Ryle declares outwardly to Lily, "I want to fuck you." So there's no buildup. There's nothing going on there. There's no build-up, nothing. It's just right into it, love at first sight nonsense, except in Ryle's case, I guess it's not love, he's horny. And I don't know what Lily sees in him, because he is the most unlikable person on first meeting, which I will get into more later on a deeper level. But on a surface level, no chemistry between the two love interests. There's no reason for Lily to want to be involved with Ryle in general, because he is generally unlikable and terrible. There is no reason for Ryle to otherwise want to be involved with Lily, other than the whole "she's not like other girls" trope. Wattpad sin, I don't know what we're on. I'm done counting. Lily, because she is, inspired by Ryle Kincaid, she, doesn't see him for 6 months, but decides to pursue her dreams and open up a flower shop called Lily Blooms. And that's when, randomly, as if fate was involved, a bored rich woman walks in and offers to basically do free labor for her because she's bored. What in the Wattpad bullshit? This is literally just the Wattpad "I'm a rich kid and my parents are never home" trope, but for young adult novels. And guess what? Take a fucking guess. She's Ryle's sister. There is a gay friend trope where Colleen Hoover depicts a gay man non-consensually groping Lily, which I hate. I hate that in real life, and I hate that in fiction. Please don't do that in real life or fiction. I never want to see it. The backstory between Lily and the second love interest is revealed, and I shit you not, via unsent fan letters to Ellen DeGeneres. She is an Ellen DeGeneres stan, and that is an important plot point to this story. Ellen DeGeneres is a plot device. And let me just read you some of these quotes that I saved, because just to give you an idea of how badly this is written. "My heart begins to beat like it's on a speed date, and I start scratching at my chest again." I read this and I don't know what literary device Colleen is trying to use. Is she trying to do a simile, in which case she didn't really do it right? Is she anthropomorphizing the heart? Why would is it supposed to be like a pun, because like speed date, heart thumping fast? I don't know what Colleen Hoover was trying to do with that sentence, and it didn't work, whatever she was trying to do. It just left me confused, and there were several points throughout the book where Colleen would write something and I would be like, am I illiterate? Like, is my reading comprehension fucked up at this point? Why does that not fit and or make sense? Here's an example of how Colleen Hoover can't write romance to save her fucking life. This is a direct quote from the book again, by the way. "When he was wiping that cow shit on me, it was quite possibly the most turned on I have ever been." Does Colleen think she's funny? Because I don't think she's funny. I think that was the worst thing I've ever... Well, that's not the worst thing I've ever read, actually. But that really, really is bad. It sucks. The sex scenes in this book were terrible. They sucked. They were written extremely vaguely, which I am of the opinion that if you are going to write sex into your books, even with a little bit of detail, then you need to go all of the way and not be a fucking coward about it. But I don't think Colleen can write sex because she can't even write romance. The vague, mildly uncomfortable sex she did write was probably the most unsexy thing I've ever read in my life. At one point, to give you an idea, because Ryle's a neurosurgeon, he used a stethoscope to get her heartbeat as they were having sex. And it was the cringiest shit I've ever read in my life. So yeah, and Colleen did that like 4 times throughout the story. She would write very vague, undescriptive sex. That was probably the most unsexy thing you could ever read in your life. And I'd say, like, for the most part, it wasn't even necessary for the story. Like, it was just put in there for some fucking reason. It's probably because Colleen can't write romance, so she decided, hey, I'm gonna add sex. I'm gonna add sex, so that's romance. I'm doing it, guys. I'm writing romance. Last but not least, last Wattpad sin, pregnancy trope. Okay, now that we've gone through all of the Wattpad cringe, now we're going to get into the abuse stuff. Extra trigger warning here. I am going to explain the purpose of this segment of the video in the last segment of the video, where I explain why Colleen pretty much fell flat entirely trying to describe the abuse cycle. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to read off every single red flag that Ryle Kincaid gave off to Lily, in front of Lily, in the first third of the book before they even, got together, okay? Bear with me here. We are introduced to Ryle Kincaid by him violently kicking a chair over and over because he was having a breakdown. Ryle says on their first meeting blatantly that he does not do relationships and that he only does one-night stands because he values his job more than, relationships, which is okay. Except if that's the case, you shouldn't get into a relationship. This is another direct quote from the book. He shakes his head. Oh, I'm way too selfish to have children, and I'm definitely way too selfish to be in a relationship. After Lily explicitly says she does not do one-night stands with people she does not know, and after Ryle blatantly says that he wants to fuck her with no decorum, absolutely, he is the most unlikable character ever, and I will once again get into that a little later. After all that, Ryle persists at one point pulling Lily's chair over to flirt with her as if that's going to make her give in and give up her values, which includes not having one-night stands, which she is allowed to, assert. We are still in the first meeting, and these are all red flags from the first meeting. And last red flag from the first meeting, he, to a woman he barely knows, he has had one conversation with and, has, repeatedly tried to, convince her to have a one-night stand with him. He takes a photo of her laying in the lounge chair without her permission, which is not romantic. That's fucking creepy, especially considering he has said that he does not do relationships and he only does one-night stands. That's fucking creepy. Finally getting out of their first meeting, we have a quote from Ryle's sister, Alyssa, who said, Alyssa pulls her hand from his and crosses her arms over her chest. I'm not going anywhere, she says. My brother cannot be trusted. So even his sister knows and has warned Lily several times. He knocked on 25 apartment doors in Lily's apartment building to find her apartment like a fucking stalker. That's not cute. That's not romantic. That's scary. I am going to read this quote outright because I need you guys to hear how this was written, and I will give you context. These next couple of months are the most important months in my entire career, and I have to be focused. I'm closing in on the end of my residency, and then I'll have to sit for my exams. He's pacing my living room, talking frantically with his hands. But for the past week, I haven't been able to get you out of my head. I don't know why. At work, at home, all I can think about is how crazy it feels when I'm near you, and I need you to make it stop, Lily. He stops pacing and faces me. Please make it stop just once. That's all it'll take, I swear. He's literally blaming Lily for not having sex with him, for him not being able to focus while he's doing neurosurgeon residency. He knocked on 29 doors to beg for sex and blames his problems on Lily not giving consent. And worst of all, he eventually wears Lily down to where she agrees in that moment. They did not end up having sex that night. He fell asleep. But still, it's the premise of him knocking on 29 doors to find her, blame her for his incompetency, and then get on his knees to beg her to have sex with him. And then at a party, he throws a wine glass at a trash can because he's jealous Lily brought a date. Hey guys, flashback to that photo that he took. You guys remember the lounge chair photo? Oh yeah, he blew it up and zoomed in a little bit so nobody would see that it's Lily, and then made it into some, modern art piece that he put in his sister's apartment. He put that photo of Lily and framed it and put it in his sister's apartment as an art piece. Then, in the middle of a party, after they had a little squabble and she is trying to get away from him, he picks her up in the middle of the party, further humiliating her, brought her back to his room, and forcefully kissed her without consent. Afterwards, he pulls the "I think you can change me" card. And then after that, all of the steps in the relationship went too fast. Within 5 days after that incident, they were boyfriend and girlfriend. And then, within those same 5 days, he met her mother. And then they got married after 6 months. What is my point? What point am I trying to make? Now, when making this video, I had to be careful critiquing Lily's behavior because her behavior could realistically be that of a victim. It could very well be victim blaming for me to critique any of Lily's behaviors, and I was very critical of my thoughts relating to Lily. So this is not necessarily me attacking how Lily was written, although she was written like a Not Like Other Girls cringe compilation. But regarding her victimhood in the next 2/3 of the book, that is not what I'm critiquing here. My critique of Colleen in this situation is not how Lily was written as a victim, but how Ryle was written as an abuser. My critiques are mostly about how Ryle was written and how Colleen's depiction and statement on the cycle of abuse does fall flat, and that is beyond, her terrible writing. There's lots of things I would have done different to tell this story. There are two main issues that I have with how Ryle was written. First one, I don't know what Colleen was thinking or what her purpose was, making it seem like Ryle's PTSD was the reason he was an abuser in the first place. Because that is what it came across as. No matter what her intentions were, that is what it came across as. Ryle having PTSD should not have been the reason he was abusive, because mental illness does not cause abuse. One's grapple for power and control over another person is the reason for abuse. And that is regardless if that person has mental illness or not. There are lots of mentally ill people with PTSD, who do not abuse people. And that is because the necessary ingredient for having an abuser, and yes, this does apply to personality disorders like antisocial personality disorder. This does apply to them as well. The necessary ingredient to being an abuser is one's grapple for power and control over that person. Making out abusers to be, people that don't know what they're doing is never going to help anyone, because they do know what they're doing. Abusers know what they're doing and they don't care that it's wrong, whether they acknowledge that it's wrong or not. And that kind of brings me into my second point. The purpose before of me, explaining all of the red flags was not to victim blame Lily as the abused, but rather to critique how Colleen Hoover decided to write an abuser. The thing about abusers is that you don't know they're abusers until you have been trapped. To the public eye, they are likable. People like abusers. I have my own firsthand experience. Upon first meeting, abusers are likable. That's how they, get what they want. A lot of people don't see any red flags for a while, and then they slowly start revealing themselves once the abuser thinks that they have the victim trapped. Colleen attempted that to some extent, except she didn't personality-wise. She only did the attractive neurosurgeon part, which, yes, a lot of times abusers are people in power. People that crave power and control will find places that can give them that power and control. And they are often abusers. I'm trying not to be so mean to Colleen here, but every time I think of something to compliment her on, my brain's like, okay, but she did this later. Scratch that on the neurosurgeon part. Ryle's PTSD is from accidentally killing his little brother with a gun as a child because the safety was off, and that's why he became a neurosurgeon. So Colleen even botched that. Nothing about Ryle Kincaid is likable. He is a walking red flag from the first point you meet him. He is insufferable. The reason why the chemistry is so bad as well is because there is no reason for Ryle to become so obsessed with Lily and for Lily to be attracted to Ryle other than the fact that he's good looking. That's why there is no chemistry, because there's no reason for Lily to have any interest in this man, because his personality is that of just wet, soggy cardboard. He is not suave. He does not make people like him when he first talks to them. He directly says that he does not want a relationship and that he is too selfish to be in a relationship, blah, 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 blah. The only way that I can throw Colleen a bone here is by saying that maybe that was part of his more extreme, intricate plan to entrap Lily. That thought process falls flat when you see how Colleen writes his PTSD as the reason for his blackouts. You can throw Colleen a bone in many places here, but in the end, she just didn't write it well. It genuinely feels Colleen did not write the PTSD portion to be a guilt trip necessarily, but rather as a plot point as to why Ryle is abusive, which is fucked up. And if that was not her intention, as I said earlier, she did a bad job writing it. If that was her intention, to make the PTSD point be a guilt trip sort of point, or something of the like, she did not do a good job. There's nothing likable about him when Lily first meets him. I'm not saying that it's impossible for something like that to happen. And if it does, it still would not be the victim's fault. Even if there were, red flags coming out the wazoo and the man was the most unlikable person you've ever met, if that happened in real life and there was still a victim involved, still would not be the victim's fault. The fact of the matter is, Colleen did not portray abusers as abusers are. In effect, of writing Ryle as an abuser kind of fucked up. Everything else got fucked up as well, and including, Lily's behavior, including, everything else. Everybody else in the situation there just got fucked up. And it just was not a good depiction of abuse, or a very thoroughly thought out depiction of abuse. It felt like Colleen was trying to make a deep statement about the cycle of abuse, but it was written in just the worst Wattpad bullshit trope terms, and it didn't stick, it didn't land. Anyways, to sum it up, I'm never taking Booktok recommendations ever again. You guys have no taste. This book was written like a terrible 2012 One Direction fan fiction. Colleen can't write romance to save her life, and she apparently can't write abuse either, because it ends up falling flat. This book sucks.